Excellency, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, very soon we will be in a position to call you President, but for the time being the work is still in full swing here in Berlin. For that reason alone, this is not the time for final conclusions. For the Petersberg Climate Dialogue is not a round of negotiation that will lead at the end of the day to a minimum consensus which will be celebrated with grand speeches. The Petersberg Climate Dialogue is designed to prepare the COP28 in Dubai at the end of the year with concrete ideas and strategies. Thus, I would like to thank you for the committed cooperation in this Petersberg Climate Dialogue, which we are hosting together. It is with great interest that I followed your speech yesterday, in which you presented your ideas regarding the COP28 in Dubai. Every year we have an international climate conference, and with every year the pressure increases because the climate crisis leads to farmland drying up, forces increasing numbers of people to flee day after day, and thus it also increases the responsibility for the respective presidencies of the climate conference. The United Arab Emirates and you personally have set yourselves ambitious targets for this COP28. You want to make ambitious headway. As the first country in the region, your country has publicly announced a target for climate neutrality. Thus, the United Arab Emirates, in a special way, represent the transition from the age of fossil fuels to the age of renewables, a fossil age to a renewable age. However, this transition will only succeed if not, at the end of the day, we're not left with some countries feeling they are the losers, whilst others believe they're the winners. And we need this level of ambition because the recent IPCC assessment report has done the maths and spelt out in brutal clarity how far away we are from reaching the Paris target of limiting global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees. If we want to keep that target within reach, we have to reduce global greenhouse gases emission by half by 2030, and we have to triple renewables by then. This is what the report states. And the good thing about it is that this is something that we can achieve if we act together. This is why I launched the idea yesterday that with regard to COP28 in Dubai, we should aim to achieve a fixed global target on the expansion of renewables. I know that this still requires a lot of convincing, but it will not work without a rapid expansion of renewables. They are cheaper than any other source of energy, and they're available everywhere immediately. As federal government, we have set ourselves ambitious targets in that regard. By 2030, 80% of our electricity is to come from renewables, and at the same time, we aim to phase out coal by then. And we will adhere to our commitments on climate finance and make available €6 billion by 2025 for global climate finance. In Bonn, in October, we will be hosting the replenishment conference of the Green Climate Fund, a very important element of the pledge that the developed countries have made to make available $100 billion for climate finance per year. And I'm pleased that in cooperation with our Canadian partners, in the talks that have taken place here and continue to take place here, we have been able to reach a position where we can say that it looks as if we will be able to make available the full amount this year. We will be able to mobilize that amount. COP28 will only be successful if we act in a spirit of solidarity. Many countries here made the point that those countries suffer most from the impact of global warming that have least contributed to its causes. And for me, that is one of the most intolerable aspects of the climate crisis. It is unjust. Thus, It is not only about fighting the climate crisis, it is about a just transformation. The agreement reached at COP27 to set up a fund for loss and damage was thus, in my eyes, of historic importance. But it has to be more than just words on a sheet of paper. The most vulnerable countries expect, and they do rightly so, that we decide upon concrete assistance in Dubai. The coming green transformation will cost trillions. We thus need a global financial system that fuels climate investment and makes it affordable for poorer countries, and above all, makes it possible for them to invest in renewables. This will only succeed, can only be achieved if we cooperate with the private sector with the aim of mobilizing the necessary funding. This year's Petersberg Climate Dialogue has once again impressed upon us that if we act together in concert as nations, we can find the right targets and objectives and can identify paths that can be walked upon. No matter whether we are small countries, industrialized or non-industrialized, a developed or non-developed country, we can change the world if we act together. It is no longer about visions. It is finally about delivering on the pledges we made. Dear Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, this is the hope and at the same time the great responsibility resting on the shoulders of your presidency. You can trust and rely on Germany's support in this endeavor. And I would like to thank you for the excellent cooperation here at and during the Petersberg Climate Dialogue, which is being, so to speak, preparing the ground for the COP28.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for being here with us at this very important meeting. Allow me first to take this opportunity to thank Her Excellency, the Minister, as well as the German government for providing us this opportunity through this very important platform and for co-hosting this important dialogue and for the great hospitality. In fact, myself and my team have been very closely working with our German counterparts, and I think it all has materialized in the progress made thus far in the past 2 days. These past 2 days, in our view, were very constructive. We had many sessions, we had many open discussions, and I have personally, as the COP28 President-designate, gained a lot of insight and a deeper understanding of the issues at hand. These meetings, in our view, have been very productive, very constructive, and especially in the past 2 days here in Berlin, we had representatives from over 40 countries, as well as many important stakeholders from all UNFCCC constituencies. Our discussion have been very much centered and focused on practical actions, practical steps, real change that is needed to be instituted across the process, and to ensure that the entire climate agenda adopts a very progressive spirit in how we move it forward. And as I said yesterday, what happens inside the negotiation rooms is very critical, but also actions outside the negotiations are equally as important. We have 7 years left to reduce emissions by 43% and to keep the ambitions of the Paris Agreement alive. It is very critical that we all understand the significance of this year. This year is extremely important simply because it marks the first global stocktake since the Paris Agreement. All indicators, and in particular the most recent IPCC report, are all telling us that we are way off track. The world based on these facts is simply demanding transformational progress, and we must deliver transformational action across all climate pillars. On mitigation, we need to triple renewables, double hydrogen production, expand nuclear power, improve battery storage, and of course, if we're serious about mitigating climate change, and reducing in a practical manner emissions, we must scale up carbon capture technologies. This all must happen in parallel with real, serious issues, with real and serious programs and initiatives to minimize and eventually eliminate all carbon from the energy we use today and from industry across the board. On adaptation, we need to fulfill the global goal on adaptation. We need to double adaptation finance and protect biodiversity and natural carbon sinks. On climate finance, and as I've said yesterday, we need to fulfill the $100 billion pledge from donor countries, and I was very happy, pleased, and encouraged by the statement made yesterday, the statement made by Her Excellency, my good friend, Minister Baerbock, that progress is indeed being made. In addition, we must stay focused on the serious need to reform the international financial institutions as well as the multilateral development banks. And this is simply a point that I have been stressing all along for the very simple reason to unlock much more concessional finance, mitigate risk, and attract private capital at a multiple. On loss and damage, this was a great outcome from COP27. We need to fully operationalize the fund and ensure that we develop the necessary mechanisms for all funding arrangements related. We want to make sure that we work very closely with all stakeholders. I have been very engaged throughout the past 3.5 months on a listening engagement tour. It has been an extremely beneficial experience. It had deepened our knowledge and our understanding, and we have a much better appreciation of what is at stake through the hosting of COP28. And as you all know, and I've repeatedly said this, in the UAE, we take this responsibility of hosting COP28 with humility, with a deep sense of responsibility, and a deep sense of urgency. Based on our findings throughout our engagements in the listening tour, we have developed a long list of programs and initiatives that we will soon be communicating. But there is one point I'd like to highlight here because I'm really proud of it. And it's simply the fact that we are practicing inclusivity starting with my own office, the COP28 Presidency Office. My office today consists of 60% women, 60% from the Global South, and the average age is 34. That is how we are instilling a clear message about inclusivity, full engagement of all stakeholders, ensuring that women are fully empowered throughout the process, as well as ensuring that the Global South have the right opportunity to position themselves. And I'm sure throughout the exercise, and with the fact that we have our average age 34, we will clearly and in practice demonstrate how committed we are to youth and youth empowerment. Through, of course, many initiatives like the International Youth Climate Delegate Program, which is today the largest initiative to expand youth participation from underrepresented countries in the climate process to date. we're very proud of that initiative. And of course, we're very open to ideas of how we can better engage and facilitate and support the youth across the activities of COP28. Equally important will be recognizing the unique contribution of indigenous peoples. We know that they make 5% of the population and protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. So including them is a top priority for us. As I mentioned in my speech yesterday and repeatedly before, we will provide the necessary space, the environment, and the facilitation to all parties to discuss, debate, and agree, as well as align on the role of all sources of energy. We all know the destination. No one can deny that the world is determined and is aligning to reach net zero. That is the ultimate goal. We also know that there will be different ways, different roadmaps, and different mechanisms that will allow for us to get there in the fastest possible way and in the most efficient manner. While we do all of this, we must stay laser focused on reducing emissions across every sector. For the power sector, we need to ramp up renewables dramatically. We need 24,000 terawatt hours by 2030, and we need to double that by 2040. We also know that for heavy emitting sectors, we will need different solutions like hydrogen and ammonia. And as the IPCC report said, carbon capture and other technologies will have a very important, in fact, an essential role to play in helping mitigate climate change and help reduce emissions across all businesses. I'd like to conclude my introductory remarks by repeating that in a pragmatic, practical, just and well-managed energy transition, we must stay focused on phasing out emissions from all sectors while we stay focused on scaling up and phasing up all viable, affordable, zero-carbon alternatives. We're very keen and we're very serious about our engagement. We want to work with all stakeholders, all industries, governments, public sector, private sector, NGOs, and civil society to make the transformational progress the world needs happen. And of course, the role of media is also very important. We need to make sure that media engages and supports our genuine interests in helping push this agenda forward and deliver real and true, ambitious and practical results at COP28. And I do rely on your engagement on focusing the world's attention on the imperative of delivering action, results, and gauging everyone's interest towards one objective and one objective only, and that is delivering a tangible outcome that will help change the game and correct course. On my part, I will continue to listen, I will continue to engage with everyone, and with that I thank you for your time and thank you, Your Excellency, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We now have a couple of minutes left for questions. We have to end this press conference on time because we are, of course, expecting the arrival of Chancellor Scholz. The first question comes from Frank Jordans from Associated Press.
Frank Jordans, AP. Frau Ministerin, Sie haben vorgeschlagen,
Madam Minister, you proposed a global target on the expansion of renewables to be agreed at the COP. What figure are you thinking of? Is this a deviation from setting a final date for the end use of all fossil fuels? Dr. Sultan.
by Minister Baerbock, something your presidency can get behind as one of the key deliverables at the COP? Would that be easier than a fossil fuel phase-out commitment that 80 countries called for in Sharm el-Sheikh?
Wir sehen, mit welcher Geschwindigkeit
we are witnessing the speed at which the climate crisis is developing dramatically, and it is thus the more important that we use the Petersberg Climate Dialogue to also think outside the box. That is, to reflect time and again what we can do on top of what we're already doing. We know that we have not made sufficient use of valuable years in that regard, and thus it is important that during the global stock take that will take place at the next COP, we actually take stock of what we have achieved. The targets we've set ourselves, we have to get out of fossil fuels. We have to dramatically reduce emissions. Thus, in response to your question, no, this is not an alternative suggestion or proposal of mine. We are reviewing our national targets, our NDCs. Every country, every region will have to deliver in that regard. And the Commissioner of the European Union, Mr. Timmermans, has been very clear, saying that the European Commission, too, with regard to its target for 2030, has to carry out a self-critical review. At the same time, we see the enormous potential and opportunities that technologies open up. You know, we are engaging in debates, and I think that Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber made that very clear. As he said, he was traveling the countries on a tour, listening to people, and the point was made that mitigation of the CO2 or reducing CO2 targets might lead to difficulties, but the opposite will be the case. And thus it is so important for me to make the point that reducing CO2 means more technology transfer, thus focusing on renewables and possibly all countries being able to agree to such a target, even those who have not been able to do so so far. The IPCC report has been very clear in that regard. We need to triple the expansion of renewables by 2030 globally, and you can, of course, break that down on each and every individual country.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Excellency, for your response. I'd like just to add the following. As you know, the President's role is to provide space, environment, and to help facilitate discussion, debates, with an aim of reaching alignment and agreement among all parties of the agreement. Having said that, of course, our approach is going to be, in a way, a mirror image of what we have been doing in the United Arab Emirates, where we have embraced a comprehensive, holistic approach to energy transition that included all sources of energy with one main theme. And the theme have always been phasing out emissions. Again, phasing out emissions by building on and capitalizing on existing and new and emerging technologies. And in parallel, we believe that the world should come to terms with some realities and build this energy transition approach or roadmap on some realities. We believe that a parallel track is very much needed here, and it will be all sources. We know that fossil fuel will continue to play a role in the foreseeable future in helping meet global energy requirements. So our aim should be focused on ensuring that we phase out emissions from all sectors, whether it's oil and gas or high emitting industries, while in parallel, we should exert all effort and all investments in the renewable energy and clean technology space. We said that we aim to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030 and then double it thereafter to 2040. I'll give you an example. In the UAE, for example, we have a company called Masdar. I was honored to actually give birth to this organization as the founding CEO. I continue to serve as the chairman. Our target is to achieve 100 gigawatt by 2030. We know that's a very ambitious target. We know that's a very aggressive plan, but we know that the opportunities are available. What is going to be key here is ensuring that technology is advancing, technology is available, and technology is scalable. In parallel, and that needs to be coupled with the technology advancement, is ensuring that climate finance is made available, made accessible, as well as affordable, especially for the Global South who need it the most. So in short, we should stay laser focused on phasing out emissions while we pursue and advance renewable energy, clean technologies, keeping in the back of our mind that our main focus here is eliminating emissions while allowing socio-economic progress.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, we have to end this press conference on time, and our time is unfortunately over. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
You guys have the best view in the house.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Dear Chancellor Scholz, lieber Olaf, dear Sultan Al-Jaber, colleagues, excellencies. Welcome to day 2 of the Petersberg Climate Dialogue. This conference traditionally is the halftime marker between the annual World Climate Conferences. For the past 13 years, the PCD has laid the political groundwork for ambitious outcomes at the COP. I'm grateful that yesterday the COP President-designate presented his vision for COP28, a roadmap for transformation. Sultan, I share your conviction that at COP28 we urgently need to correct our course to keep the 1.5-degree limit within reach. You have our full support for this ambitious task. In our view, this course correction needs to include an accelerated global expansion of renewables, greater energy efficiency, and the phase-out of fossil fuels. But the PCD is also a forum for pragmatic, creative ideas and bold initiatives. A place where we build alliances among nations that want to lead the way by example and want to inspire others. And a place to foster dialogue even across geopolitical divides. I'm glad that yesterday we had Mia Motley with us, who shared her powerful vision for reforming the global financial architecture. The energy sector is still responsible for almost 40% of global emissions. We discussed that also yesterday. And this is why we assessed in workshops, and this is again a creative setup for our working mode here at the PCD. We discussed yesterday in a workshop how we can achieve a global goal for renewable energy and to phase out fossil fuels. This morning, our discussion focused on those countries most affected by the climate crisis. The climate crisis is causing severe losses and damages in the countries that are the least responsible for it, so it was very keen for us to follow up on what we started last year here at the Petersberg Climate Dialogue, the Loss and Damage Fund. Today we continue and we conclude by this session our talks with this high-level segment. And I'm delighted to welcome German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to the Petersberg Climate Dialogue to discuss Germany's contribution tackling the global crisis and also giving this PCD an end, but also the kick-off for the next upcoming COP28. So, Chancellor, we are delighted having you here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Sehr geehrter Herr Dr.
Al-Jaber, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear Annalena Baerbock, ladies and gentlemen. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10 years. This quote by Bill Gates is so well known that some see it as the law of Gates. But the past year, it seems, has suspended this law. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine was not just a terrible breach of international law and international peace order. It advanced a fundamental reform as far as our energy supply is concerned. Germany, for instance, has become independent within months, independent from Russian coal, Russian oil, and Russian gas. Who would have thought that this was possible a year ago? Around the globe, numerous countries are changing course. One reason being the all-time highs when it comes to energy prices that we've experienced this past year. Temporarily, many countries had to go back to coal, Germany as well. Global consumption rose in 2022 by 1.2%, and this is not good, and we need to reverse this trend as soon as possible. And at the same time, I'm more optimistic than ever before that this trend towards renewable energies will continue and will actually increase. Unlike rarely before, the year 2022 raised our awareness how dangerous it is to be dependent from fossil fuels from the perspective of environment and climate policy, but also from an economic and security political point of view. This is why the actions of my governments, but also when talking to my colleagues around the globe, we're not only discussing if we're achieving our climate targets, but we're talking about how, we're talking about the doing, the implementation. Finally, because it is more clear than ever before, there is no cheaper and safer energy source than renewable energy, and also in places of the world which do not have reliable energy supplies just yet. And this change in awareness results in new opportunities, new markets, new trade relations, new business areas. For instance, when it comes to the production of green steel or green hydrogen, or when it comes to the production of batteries or semiconductors. And this brings me to the second part of the law of Gates. I believe after the change and the transformation that we have achieved in the past 12 months, no one underestimates anymore which change will be possible in the coming 10 years. You can witness the forces released by this insights and this awareness can be seen around the globe. Your country, Honorable Dr. Al-Jaber, is well on the way from becoming the biggest and leading producer of renewable energies after being the largest exporter of fossil energies, and especially because the economic power of the UAE so far relied in large parts on fossil energies. I find it all the more remarkable that you resolutely turned to climate neutral added values and technologies. Tomorrow I will travel to Kenya, where 90% of electricity is generated by renewable energies, with the aim of increasing this to 100% by the year 2030. Namibia wants to become one of the leading hydrogen exporters with the help of investments and technology from Germany. Experts are set to take place and begin in 2 years' time. Under Germany's G7 presidency, we forged just energy transition partnerships with Indonesia, South Africa, and Vietnam, thus accelerating the socially just phasing out of coal, and we help provide for clean alternatives. Brazil covers half of its primary energy needs from renewable energies. Together with the new Brazilian government and many like-minded countries, we turn the protection of the Amazon to a priority again. And the concerns of the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and the Caribbean are placed, rightly so, on top of the international agenda, more so than a couple of years ago. During an international conference in June in Paris and also at the G20 summit in New Delhi, we're going to talk about the multilateral development banks' role and how multilateral development banks can lend a more effective contribution to financing of development and climate. I support this goal. We managed to achieve a breakthrough by installing a protective shield against climate risks for the benefit of the vulnerable 20 of the countries that are most affected by climate change. Also, the fund for loss and damages that was decided in Sharm el-Sheikh is making progress. It is important that we are seeing more and more supporters, and that prosperous emerging countries are also lending a contribution here. It is important also that we cushion the impact of climate change on agriculture and global food supply, especially in Africa. We, for instance, also support the World Food Programme in the Sahel states to make soils arable again, restore ecosystems, and stabilize these ecosystems against climate change. A pivotal question here is how we can improve supply and improve the regional climate-friendly production of fertilizers. And this is also going to be a topic during my visit in Kenya and my talks with President Ruto. I'm optimistic also because of the new resolve among international industrialized nations to make more progress and become more ambitious. In Elmo at the G7 summit, we agreed on the decarbonization of the energy sector by 2030 and the end of the use of coal-fired power generation. At the upcoming summit in Hiroshima, we want to follow up on that. Our climate and energy ministers have prepared the ground and promised the development of 150 gigawatt of offshore wind power and 1 terawatt of photovoltaics by 2030. Good news for climate protection is also that the United States, under President Biden, promote the transition to renewable energies and climate-friendly technologies again. And that's also what the Inflation Reduction Act stands for. We Europeans may not be in agreement with all individual rules and regulations. We're not, because we need fair competition among partners for the market launch of climate technologies, and we're engaging in discussions with the Americans. The aim, the goals of the US government to create the foundations for climate neutral industries is a goal that we share and we fully support. As European Union, we have increased our own level of ambition. This is represented by the reform of the emissions trading system that we agreed upon a couple of weeks ago. In future, 85% of our emissions will be submitted to carbon pricing with a clear end date for CO2 emissions. That holds true of the sectors of transport, building, and industry. To the same degree. We make sure that we adhere to our climate goals and achieve both to become climate neutral but remain an attractive industrial location at the same time. The Climate Club serves the same objective. We founded the Climate Club during our G7 presidency. It is about pragmatic solutions for climate protections, above also the important energy sector as well. And we want to bring as many ambitious countries around one table as possible to promote the climate-friendly development of their industries. It would be crazy if we were not tackling this monumental task together in an age where the world has become so small. This is why in this Climate Club, we need common standards and rules, and we want to talk how we can support the countries, those countries who don't have access to private investments. I'm very happy that this idea has become so popular, especially among the important emerging nations. Since its foundation in December, we have Chile, but also Argentina, Indonesia, and Colombia have become members in this Climate Club. And I would like to encourage you to follow this example. The more we are focusing on comparable rules and standards, the closer we cooperate when it comes to market launch of new technologies, the less protectionism we have, the less different rules and regulations we have which impede progress and innovations. Let's look into the future together and take the atmosphere of change that existed this past year along with us. On the national level, this means we let words be followed by actions. All too long, we were complacent and it sufficed to formulate ambitious goals. To become climate neutral by 2045, to have 80% of renewables, electricity coming from renewable energies by 2030, all of this is right and all of this holds true. It is new that we not only describe these goals, but we pave the way day by day in many sectors. It's not about this one symbolic decision, this one lever that we pull, but it is about accelerating planning and authorization procedures for infrastructures of the future. We did so. It is about triggering a boom of private investment into climate-friendly technologies by creating attractive conditions for investment. This is what is represented by the Green Deal of the European Union, together with our national instruments for investment and promotion. And last but not least, everyone in politics, companies, citizens need security to plan and a reliable framework. We want to produce 80% of our electricity consumption from renewables by 2030. That means that we need to build more wind power plants and 43 soccer fields of photovoltaic plants per day. That means that we need to build new railway lines and energy grids, as we've decided now. And it also needs changing over to a CO2 neutral heat supply gradually. We need to replace our heating systems, and we also need to talk about this truth. We have programs that support citizens so that everyone can manage this heat transition without any concerns and worries about the future. Looking to the future and act, and this is what guides us in international climate politics as well. We look to the next climate conference in Dubai, Dr. Al-Jaber, because this is where we're going to see the first global stocktake since forging the Paris Agreement. For Germany and for all of Europe, this mechanism is at the core of the climate agreement. And this is why the EU, in its climate law, agreed to present a new intermediate goal for the time after 2030, 6 months after the stocktake in Dubai. And we hope that many countries will follow suit. And I'd like to propose something that we can agree on together in Dubai, and to set a clear goal to the commitment to expand the use of renewable energies, for instance, tripling the expansion by 2030. And this would send out a clear signal to the business community and the finance community. And this is what we're also going to talk about in Dubai. We need to finance the change, the transition towards climate neutrality. And this will be only possible by public and private investment. I know about the big differences that we still see and exist when it comes to the financing of capital intensive climate-friendly plans and infrastructure. Market capable and clean technologies don't serve anything if capital costs are too high and profitability too low. But we can change that. The Green Climate Fund has a lot of experience with financing climate-friendly business models. My colleague Svenja Schulze will invite your countries to the replenishment conference to Bonn, and we will follow suit and let words followed by actions. I can announce that we plan to support the replenishment with €2 billion. That's a third more than during our last contribution. And I appeal to the many traditional and possible new donors. Let us continue this success story. It is more important than ever before. And let me reiterate this again. Germany stands by its pledge to increase the funds for international climate financing by 2025 to the tune of €6 billion. It is about our own credibility and that every ton of CO2 that is saved somewhere around the globe is a common success. Ladies and gentlemen, this past year has shown just how much change is possible. We have the opportunity to follow up on this in Dubai and make sure that the law of Gates has to be reformulated. We may have underestimated what we can change during the course of 1 year, but we know all the more now just how much change is possible in the upcoming 10 years. Let us promote this change together. Thank you very much, and once again, welcome to Berlin.
Thank you very much, dear Chancellor, for your inspiring speech and the concrete proposals and the concrete action Germany, Europe is doing already. 43 football pitches full of solar per day, but also filling up the Global Green Climate Fund. While I'm asking the press to please leave the room, because the